Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third session on the energy and how do we decarbonise transportation. So yesterday we talked a lot about how we can decarbonise transport, and today it's about how transport-based businesses weigh up the decarbonisation options and what kind of infrastructure they need to fulfil their ambition. So today's more about, yesterday we talked about the technology and innovation. I'm really focused on some of the behaviours. So actually, today it doesn't take too long to fill up a car with diesel or petrol. It doesn't take long to fill up an aircraft with Jet 1 aviation fuel. In fact, we've spent 70 years perfecting it, perfecting our operations, and we've probably got them very, very efficient. In fact, actually, we now have the right locations, the right fuel at the right locations to refuel. At airports, we have hydrant systems underground, so that it's right underneath the aircraft to make it really efficient for turnaround times. So this is a hugely important but underrepresented issue to enable businesses to embrace a net zero operation. So to successfully tackle emissions at scale, we must consult businesses and understand their needs and their specific needs around their operations. And in fact, those human behaviours weigh on quite a bit around the decisions that they need, these organisations need, to help decarbonise. Yes, there's the vehicle, and we talked a lot about that yesterday and the types of vehicles. Around the scale of them, the operation, the distances, the energy consumption, the cost. But now we need to start to consider, well, actually, the operative, the users of the transport unit, the drivers. How do they work? What cost of it? What's the impact if they have to stop to recharge or refuel? And then you've also got the businesses have to look at economic headwinds. Rising inflation, skill shortages, how does that impact the changes that they need to do to their operation as they transition to a zero-emission fleet? So it's a very complex picture, and I'm welcome here with a great panel. I've got Megan Black here, for Head of Logistics and Environment for TfGM. We've got Andrew Hagan, the Chief Development Officer for Element 2, and Steve Offley, Net Zero Transport Lead from Wales and West Utilities, and they're here to share some of their experiences as businesses looking to try and decarbonise their fleets. So a great panel, and I want to take this opportunity to say that at the end of the three presentations, we're going to do some question and answers, so there'll be a mic that goes around the room. So if you've got any questions, save them to the end, put your hand up, and then I'll come to you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is Megan Black from TfGM.
Thanks. So I just thought I'd start off with my slide presentation today, hopefully. There we go. Just explaining who Transport for Greater Manchester are, although I did see that the Mayor did his keynote speech yesterday, so probably said quite a bit of what I'm going to cover. We are the local transport body responsible for transport in Greater Manchester, and hopefully you have noticed the fact that there are a lot more yellow buses running on a B network. So we are the first city region outside of London to bring services under local control. As well as that, we manage a key route network of nearly 400 miles to keep the traffic flowing on Greater Manchester's busiest roads, and we own bus stops, shelters, and invest in new modern interchanges. We've got the tram system here in Greater Manchester, one of the largest light rail networks in the UK, and we also run a Starling bike scheme. But really importantly, we work with the Greater Manchester authorities to improve lives by connecting people and places, and that's what we are all about. And in terms of the B network, it would be wrong of me not to promote the fact that we've got Change Day on the 23rd of March, when we're introducing our integrated tickets across both bus and tram. And that's one of the things that we're doing as part of building that B network, is having that integrated system under a single trusted brand to drive economic and productivity growth and enabling housing and job creation. So The bus, tram and active travel network integrated on the 5th of January this year. As I say, we've got a big change date on the 23rd of March with the introduction of fares and ticketing for bus and tram. And then by 2028, there is an ambition to bring 8 commuter rail lines into the B network, with other lines joining by 2030. So the B network, in terms of statistics, is 5.6 million journeys every day, lots of miles clocked up on the tram network. But in terms of the franchise bus fleet, we've got 234 zero-emission buses running across 500 plus routes. And the Mayor's ambition is very clear in this space, that he wants us to have a fully electric fleet by 2030. We've also got Starling bikes as well, with over 200 stations and stands, 2,000 stands within a 5-minute walk of many residents, as that's rolled out across Manchester, Salford and Trafford. So as part of the work that we are doing, it's not moving. Oh, there we go. One of the things that we are doing is tracking zero-emission journeys. Really important for us in our decarbonisation journey. How well are we getting on shifting people to zero-emission travel? As you can see, we did some work at the end of last year to set out that about 36% of all trips across the conurbation are zero emission, and we've got ambitions across all those different journey types to improve them. But in terms of TfGM's estate, I think this is probably the number of what we're talking about today. We are a business, we've got transport interchanges that we run, where we are trying wherever possible to generate our own energy. We've also got a fleet of vehicles ourselves that we own and run. They are fully electric now. As I set out before, we've got zero-emission buses on the B network now. We've got more that are coming online, with that ambition set by the Mayor for 2030. But one of the things I realised I missed out when I was putting the slides together, I looked at them earlier, I thought, oh, I haven't actually mentioned the depots. And the depots are really quite important to make sure that the buses are charged up. So we've got 10 depots, we've got 4 that are partially electrified, we've got 3 that are in pre-construction, and the rest are being considered now to bring forward. You can't have an electrified bus fleet without depots being there. So really important part of the journey going forward for us. The tram system is already fully electric by design. We're already purchasing green electricity for that to run on. So we're really trying to make strides to get that network fully zero emission at street level, to help Greater Manchester with its ambition around a carbon neutral city by 2038. So at this point, I'm going to hand on to Steve. Thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name's Steve Offley. I'm the Net Zero Transport Lead for Wales and West Utilities. So what is Wales and West Utilities as an organisation? Well, we're one of the regulated gas distribution networks that cover England, Wales and Scotland. Our area covers all of Wales and a large chunk of southwest England right down to Land's End. So it's important to say that we don't actually sell gas, we just transport it. And to do that, we've got a network of about 35,000 kilometres of pipes. It carries an enormous amount of energy, and I think that sort of illustrates some of the difficulties that we have. We operate 24/7. We provide an essential safety service, and we have a mandated 1-hour response time to get to a public reported gas escape. Where are we going in future? Well, we're carrying a fossil gas in our pipe network currently, so the intention is to be completely hydrogen ready by 2040 and to be partially ready by 2035. And we're already making good progress behind the scenes towards that. To help us deliver our service, we've got quite a significant commercial vehicle fleet. So we've got about 1,400 commercials in total, and the majority of those are vans. And because our vehicles effectively operate as a mobile workshop, they spend most of their time operating at or very close to their maximum permitted weight. All of these vans are 3.5 tonnes gross or less, which is what you can drive on a car licence, or Category B. Where it starts to get a bit more difficult is that 3/4 of our light commercial vehicles are equipped to tow, and the majority of that 75% can actually tow a 3-tonne trailer. So a 3.5-tonne van towing a 3-tonne trailer, that's 6.5 tonnes. That's a lot more energy to burn. And a third of the van fleet has what we call onboard power. That onboard power requires about 30 kilowatts, which is probably about a third of the diesel engine output on the vehicle. It's a significant requirement, and that's used to power pneumatic and mains voltage electric tools, sometimes simultaneously. And these tools and equipment are absolutely essential for maintaining the gas supply. On top of our vans, we've got 60 HGVs. Whilst those are only about 4% of the fleet, they use 15% of the fuel. So as you might imagine, we're looking quite closely at our HGV fleet as well. And then on top of the HGVs and vans, we've got about 300 diesel-engined items of mobile plant. Mini diggers are the most popular and the largest in number. And then on top of that, we've got portable engined assets that run on 2-stroke petrol. And we've got to decarbonise all of those in future. It's important to note that these work as an integrated system of work, and decarbonising one part has impacts on another. And perhaps critically, unlike the Greater Manchester situation where buses go back to a depot every night, that's not the case with our van fleet. Our vans are all taken home in the evening by the engineer who drives it, and the engineer is going to be on call probably 1 week in 4, or sometimes more frequently than that. And the demographic of our engineer workforce has changed over the years, so that these days very few have access to a private driveway, let alone home charging. So I'd just say that light commercial vehicles, in particular, well, like HGVs, they're a business-critical tool, and they're an absolutely rational purchase. These vehicles are specified very closely to meet specific operational tasks, not like cars at all. And our total fleet falls within the UK top 50 because we've got 300 cars or thereabouts, and most of those are already plug-in, so we've plucked that particular low-hanging fruit. As for our commercial vehicles, they covered collectively over 14 million miles last year and used 4.3 million litres of diesel to do it. That's an enormous amount of kilowatt hours. For the driver's point of view, driving is definitely a secondary occupation. Gas engineering comes first. Every driver or every vehicle has a fuel card, and the driver has a very wide range of refuelling opportunities. Generally, refuelling takes place on the way to the first job in the morning or on the way back from the last job in the evening, and each occasion takes about 10 minutes, and that's required 2 to 3 times a week. Back in 2021, Cenex did some very detailed work on our fleet. The main findings from that were that less than 50% of our current duty cycles could be completed by a battery electric vehicle, and that was assuming overnight recharging, but actually more than 95% of our journeys could be completed by a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, assuming daily refuelling. It's worth noting that the plug-in vans that we can buy today are only suitable for a very small proportion of our operational requirements. So we do have some in the fleet, and we'll buy some more. But we know that there's a whole cohort of our fleet for which battery electric just isn't suitable. And that means that we've got no effective decarbonisation solution in sight for a very large part of our van fleet. We can't even start to plan the strategy. So I would say that high-energy fleets like ours, we're not unique, need and zero-emission vehicle technologies to enable decarbonisation. And at the moment, it looks like hydrogen is the only thing on the horizon that's going to be suitable for our HGV fleet. Are we going to have a 32-tonne vehicle with a 10-tonne battery? Doesn't look like it. And hydrogen can work for vans too. And unfortunately, there's no currently no permanent hydrogen refuelling network in our operating area. So last year we worked together with a number of suppliers to try a prototype vehicle. We only ran it for 4 weeks, but it was very educational, and it certainly whetted our appetite and meant that we knew that we had to carry out more trials. We have another trial in place for later this year. In the future, what this means is that we're probably going to have a split van fleet. Some of it will be battery electric and some of it will be hydrogen. I'll just say that from the fleet manager's perspective, I managed our fleet for 6 years, the single fuel type that we have at the moment is by far the most operationally convenient. So to summarise then, the priority has to be the scale of and pace of decarbonisation, CO2 reduction. So how do we drive progress in the van sector in particular? So there's about 4.5 million vans in the UK. And what we'd like to see, I think, is government recognise vans as a separate vehicle group. Don't lump them together with cars because they're just not the same at all. So we'd like to see legislation focus on outcomes and being technology neutral so that these other potential solutions can come to the fore. And that will allow commercial vehicle fleets like ours to make informed decisions and to choose the technology or technologies that are most cost effective to meet their duty cycles. Without that situation, there are going to be some fleets, like ours potentially, that may not be able to decarbonise at pace or even at all. And there needs to be a rational business case to drive that change. Thank you very much.
Andrew?
So thank you, and thanks all for coming. Thank you, Costain, for hosting this room, and thank you, Interchange, for inviting us. I've realized in the last week the perils of not saying thank you to your hosts sufficiently, so I can worship and say thank you. You know, I know that I should really be wearing a suit as well, but you know, such is our appetite for risk. But we're in the hydrogen world, after all. But in the hydrogen, I mean, we're going to try and keep this a little bit short, just telling you a little bit about who Element 2 is, what we do, and why we're here, why we're all here in the room. So keep it short and, you know, just do some quick, exciting slides, and we'll start with the most exciting one of the disclaimer. So anything I tell you can be, I'm absolved of any credibility of it thereafter, legally at least anyway. But no, why are we here? I mean, we're not here because hydrogen's an interesting molecule. It is. I'm a chemist. I spent 7 years studying chemistry, still focused on that first element, hydrogen, not very clever. But we're here not because of that, not because of the technology, not because of the economics, the engineering. We're here because climate change is exponential and existential, and we have to be addressing it now. We've already exceeded the Paris 1.5 degrees limit. Probably 1.6 degrees last year was what we hit. So we're advancing. It's exponential. We have to be addressing it now. In January, it was colder in New Orleans than it was in Davos, Switzerland. That's not normal. Meanwhile, celebrities' homes were burning down in California. You could argue that much things are burning down in the US, but celebrities' homes, that creates an impact. And Ireland, where I live, we had possibly our most severe storm in recorded history. This is not normal. Climate change is happening. It's extreme weather is becoming a norm, and storms are just getting stronger. So how do we speed up the hydrogen economy? How do we speed up addressing net zero? And what are the obstacles and what could be the quick wins? You know, even locally around here, say climate change is exponential and existential, what it's doing to the jet stream. In the first 11 days of the 11th month of last year in Oldham, guess how much sunshine they had in those first 11 days? 12 minutes. 12 minutes of sunshine in 11 days in Oldham. That's not normal. It's the jet stream that's being affected. So when I was here in 2023, there was a group of us met with Jonathan Reynolds and with Jürgen Meyer, and one of the messages that I gave there was that we're in danger of what happened in 2009 in Copenhagen. There was a big emphasis on climate change and addressing that, and nothing happened, and then people went into climate change language fatigue. That is sort of happening now as well, and it's our job to keep that attention going, to keep people enthusiastic, keep the eyes on the prize, and drive towards addressing and getting to net zero. And it's our job. It's Project Management 101. You start the project, everyone's enthusiastic and loves it, but as you go on, enthusiasm dwindles, and it's your job as project manager to keep that going. And, you looked at what happened actually in the Oval Office, and I talked about that with Jürgen and Jonathan at the time. We're moving from a fuels-based energy matrix to a minerals-based energy matrix. You look at the critical minerals that are in battery electric vehicles, that are in hydrogen, it's huge. Cobalt, neodymium, nickel, lithium, huge. I mean, that's what people are after right now. And that's why when people talk about Trump, saying that he's not interested in climate change, he's interested in making money, however it comes. And that is going to be one of the big ways. We're wasting a lot of energy here in the UK. Between 2021 and 2024, I think we wasted 16.4 terawatt hours of wind energy. That's £3 billion, or 7.0 million tons of CO2 emissions that we could have abated. That's a huge amount. Hydrogen is one of the ways you can capture that energy, but there's certainly other ways as well. At the moment, grid capacity is a massive issue to do that, and hydrogen is something that we're doing to address the grid capacity issues where other methods aren't working. We have a great team. Brendan, our CTO, he's been running fuel cell companies for almost 30 years. I've been working on climate change and hydrogen for at least 15 years. Sir Vince Cable, you all know, he's been working in that sort of area. He developed the Green Bank when he was in the government, and he was working at hydrogen at Shell when he was the chief economist there, which many people seem to forget. But on our advisory board, we have the person who actually started hydrogen at Shell, one of my former mentors and colleagues and former CEO of Shell, Jeroen van der Veer, who brings a huge amount of expertise and guidance to the team. So we've got an amazing management structure and a team that our investors described us as more like a Fortune 500 management board than a scale-up company. What do? Well, we provide that backbone of hydrogen supply, retail infrastructure for industrials, power to liquid, off-grid, transport demand. We are talking to industrial clusters, to fleets, to airports, to ports, and local government. So wherever anyone needs hydrogen, we can reliably and safely deliver hydrogen. And that's what we're doing, because it's all about addressing net zero, not only through hydrogen, but where hydrogen is the most appropriate solution, that's what we want to do. We are one of the leading players in hydrogen trading, retail, transportation, distribution. We've never let a customer down. We've never had a proper safety incident because we've been really ahead of the curve in that, and we've learned our lessons as we're going along. We've done over 1,500 refueling events, all safely. We stopped counting in 2023, so we've done far more than that now, but we're also addressing the other markets that I mentioned as well. We've had great success. We've had six-fold revenue growth. That's not small for a company. Yes, we start with a small number and doubling and tripling and using numbers like 6x. It's quite easy when you don't do much at the beginning, but it is growing. We're seeing that every year. There is more and more interest in hydrogen. As I said, we do hydrogen trading, retail sales. We do the transportation, the industrial supply, ports, maritime, airports, you name it. And also we develop retail stations. Our first permanent station is going to be in Tees Valley, just over the way. And we've been doing that. We've been there since 2021. It was the first refueling. And we've seen there is a market, and so now we're actually committing and putting concrete and steel in the ground. And this will be up and running in the second half of this year, no problem. I'm very vague about the date because hydrogen is never that accurate. We've got a planning permission for several sites, and one that's nearby that will support that is Kernigarth on the A1M. So as soon as we see there is a market, we're going to have that ready to go so that customers can come and not worry about the reliability either. But one of the most exciting things we're doing is working with National Gas. We're in the second round of testing with them on the deblending. So the scale model at Spade Adam they have in the north, well, further northwest than here, they've got a real life-size trial going on, and we put the hydrogen in, we blend it, and we deblend it to make sure it's pure at the other side. And that's a very efficient way of moving hydrogen around. Making hydrogen is not that expensive, but moving it around by MEGC, tube trailer container, that is. We have the transport systems, we have the non-permanent refueling systems. I stopped calling them mobile because people thought we could just show up and put some hydrogen in a vehicle. And we have the permanent stations, as I mentioned. And there's a nice artist image of them. and a nice artist image of the truck that moves the hydrogen around that we have at the moment, which doesn't show, being Scottish, my most valued part, which is the back that says "Take the high road." As said, we're supplying sustainable aviation fuels, SAFs, off-road and backup power, grid deblending, anything that the grid capacity is an issue, we're getting there with hydrogen to give them backup. That includes data centers, which require a huge amount of hydrogen at the moment, and to develop that power where they can't get grid connections. So in summary, Element 2 are great, what more need I say? But we're safe, reliable, we're experienced. We have sites, some have planning permission, and 5 of them full planning, so some are in development. If you want to refuel, come and tell us where to build, because we just need to know there's a market there. We will deliver to anyone who needs hydrogen. In addition to our refueling expertise, we can just bring it, distribution. We're open to business and open to investment as well. But the one point I want to make is now is year 0. Once you start investing, costs will come down. If you wait, year 0 will be in, say, 5 years when you start investing. So we have to start investing now. And I'll show you a calculation which says why that makes sense. And we believe in making diesel history, not making diesel history with hydrogen. Every individual vehicle will have its preferred and best and most appropriate power source, whether it's battery electric, hydrogen, HVO in the medium term, bio, whatever. It's going to be a whole host of solutions. It's not one size fits all. We're behind on the infrastructure in the UK, but that's what Element 2 does. We build out that hydrogen refueling infrastructure, and we're going to be catching up very quickly. But there's that old question about which comes first, chicken and egg. Of course, if you're an actual scientist, you know that the protein in an egg can only be made in a chicken, so the chicken had to come first. And so we are a chicken that clones itself through the medium of an egg. How do we crack it? Well, we're building 50 stations in the next 5 years, 50. That's a number that's, we now have the sites, we've acquired the strategic sites, the options, and we're going to be building out 50 of them, probably at least 5 in development this year, but 50 and 5 is that nice number. Do that through collaboration, and we've looked at where are the hotspots throughout the UK. So this is how it's going to be roughly developing, and working actually with Stephen and Andy and some of them in the southwest. One of the big drawbacks is, of course, the cost. Compared to a diesel HGV, a fuel cell is about 6 to 8 times higher in price. But as Stephen mentioned, hydrogen combustion engines, they're almost similar in price and have a huge amount of advantages over diesels. That's an easy way to make the transition quicker. If you do a back-of-the-envelope calculation, again, this is to show that a small investment now, invest in about 10 vehicles, that would be 8 million at the prices I just showed. Now, and then take McKinsey or Ballard Deloitte reports, that will come down by up to 80%, 60 to 65% in the next 5 years. So in, say, 5 years' time, when you have to buy 100 and it's mandated, you would save 80 million just by investing a small amount now. We need to align the legislation, and that's part of the key takeaways. We need UK and EU to be aligned. We can speed up the hydrogen economy. We're building out that infrastructure and delivering the hydrogen where it's needed. A small investment now can save a lot later, and adopting hydrogen combustion engines makes perfect sense. The EU's done it. I don't know why the UK Department of Transport won't be explicit. They say they support, but they need to be explicit and tell everyone that they've adopted it. So again, the 50 and 5 is the key thing to remember, that we're building that out. We have the experience, we're safe. And I mentioned that the minerals, we can come back to that if we need to, but it's a key talking point that I find, how much we are short of things like cobalt, of copper, of graphite, of lithium, and neodymium, which is only really mined in China. So avoid that language fatigue. It's our job to keep that going and expand that grid as quick as possible and use hydrogen in the meantime. Climate change is exponential and existential. That's why we're here. We have to address it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to the panel for great presentations there. So we've got a mic if you've got any questions in the room. I'm going to ask the first question, though, whilst you the room thinks about a question. So I think I like the conversation. It's not battery versus hydrogen. It's battery and hydrogen, because it's how to replace diesel and petroleum. So that's really good. But as fleet operators, how have your organisations, or what's the challenges around developing the new skills needed to operate, maintain, battery or hydrogen vehicles? Stephen, I'll start with you.
I'd like to say that we've got lots of skills, we've already developed the knowledge, but actually the first thing to do is to start capturing data. And unless you have good data, then you can't make the right decisions to buy battery or hydrogen. Even if we could buy hydrogen now, we can't yet. So I think the thing that we've learned most of all is that we thought we knew all about our transport fleet, but actually we didn't. And so what we've had to do is commission a lot of research into the way our fleet operates, so that we understand much more about what's important and how we can translate that into a zero emission vehicle in future. So I would say that at the moment, the knowledge about the vehicle technology in our fleet and our business is relatively small. We're having to grow it fast, and we're in that early learning stage at the moment. Refueling a hydrogen vehicle is simple, but the maths behind it are completely different to refueling a diesel vehicle, and we have to understand those things. So there's a lot to do. We've started, and we will continue.
So Megan, same with sort of the TfGM, how as you transfer your fleet to an battery electric, what sort of skills and challenges have you had?
Good question. Our fleet is managed by the operators in the franchise system. There has been a lot in terms of changing the depots from the diesel to the electric. In some respects, it's as simple for some people as pulling down a cable and plugging it in. But there are the skills in the engineering teams that need to change. And I think that's gradually, from what I hear, gradually happening. But I think one thing that we're really recognise is the fact that we need to bring the skills on in terms of younger people and the work that needs to be done to make sure that there are the future generations training on the future energy, if you see what I mean, rather than the sort of the traditional.
Andrew, in terms of hydrogen then, and the work you're doing, in terms of how are you helping potential investors or buyers and consumers of the future hydrogen vehicles, and telling them about what they need to do, what businesses need to do to train up on hydrogen, because there's an awful lot of hydrogen's quite a new topic really for a lot of organisations.
For a lot of organisations, it's been around since the Big Bang, so it's not that new, really. You've had several iterations. I call it Hydrogen 4.0 now. I did work on energy storage. I did a massive project on that at the World Economic Forum, including in batteries. And so I know quite a few things about that area as well, which I'll come back to. But answering your question, we don't tell them what to do. We work with people and bring in the right people as well that need to be brought in for each different application and location, because it's not about, again, here's the general rules of hydrogen, this is what you do. I mean, Stephen referred to it being a little bit different in the mechanisms of just refueling. This pesky Irish chemist called Boyle came up with this law of temperature and pressure, and people don't seem to understand it's not just stick the hose in, which it is, but you can't just let it go. You've got to monitor that pressure and temperature and make sure that you're not going to cause any safety issues on that. So we will go through with them, see what they need to be doing, look at the layout, the physical structures around, and say, this is what we think needs to be done, but not just us. We want a second opinion, making sure that we do not want any safety incidents. We don't want anyone getting injured or hurt because of hydrogen. And if we, as a small company, a scale-up now, not even a startup, but if we have an issue, we're dead. If the hydrogen industry has an issue, it's a massive setback for everyone. So we want to make sure that we have no safety issues, that we're doing it as efficiently and as economically as possible, and work with people to do that.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? There's one at the back there.
Thank you. A quick question to Andrew, actually. It's sort of a bit of a two-parter one. On those hydrogen refueling stations you're planning to put in place, what, 50 and 5, I think you called it. How many of those would you look to sort of generate the hydrogen on site? Or are you considering generating hydrogen on site? And if so, and you know, where you're not giving away any sort of obviously industrial advantage here or IP, like how are you helping make the, I suppose, the capital stack up in terms of return on investment on whether that's a wind turbine or solar panels attached to an electrolyzer, attached to, you know, a compressor, and then, you know, the pump? Thank you.
So, and I'll point out that one of our advantages is that we have a huge range of sources of hydrogen that we draw in. That's why we're reliable and we've never failed to deliver. We have backup on the near continent. We've got some sources in the UK, but that market needs to step up, that's for sure. We do not have any adherence to any particular technology. We don't have a technology team. This will develop very, very quickly in a sort of newish market that's coming into play now. And so we will look at what is proven, what is off the shelf, and implement the best once we know it works. We won't, to answer your first question, 0. We will not be generating hydrogen on site. I mean, the complications and issues that brings, but it's partly why we're working with National Gas to make sure that where we are creating huge amounts of hydrogen, we can move it efficiently to, for example, our refueling stations. But we do not want to make the same mistake that people like ITM and Shell made in the past when they tried to set up hydrogen and generate it on site.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question at the back.
Hello, David Richard from South West England. Greater Manchester's buses, do you have a target date when every one of your depots will be electrified? We're certainly doing 2 depots in the West England Combined Authority at the moment, we're first. And as part of your planning, have you thought about the coach fleet that may operate in that of Manchester for National Express or for Flixbus with regards to how they would be electrified as Manchester's a hub for and for Megabus being part of the network? So would you have you thought through, as we're beginning to think through, about electrified coach networks? We have one electrified coach, and that runs from Newport or Cardiff to London via Bristol with Flix, and I think that's the first electrified intercity coach we've got in this country. We've got gas buses as well in Bristol.
So in terms of coaches, that isn't something that's currently under consideration, but a really good point actually to take back to the team as we're thinking about it. With regard to the depots, then I suppose the Mayor's ambition around 2030 is the driving date in terms of getting all of that work done. As I said, you know, previously we've got 10 depots, 4 of them partly electrified, 3 in the planning. And the others are being considered at the moment, and I think there's longer term work being done on a further depot to build electric from new. So yes, there's a long way to go in a short time, and that's why I think electric really has been the consideration for the fleet that we've got, because we know that it is deliverable within the timescales that we've got.
Thank you. Any further questions? Down the front here.
Hello, Dominic Schofield from Senex. Again, nice to get a plug for our work with Wales and West. Actually, one quick point on the last question. I visited last year the Abellio bus depot that's being electrified in London, and they very much, there's a lot of talk that day about coaches coming into London being able to use the bus depot during the day, because of course it's a perfect fit. All the buses are out during the day, coaches bringing people into London, so that works really well, or looks like it should. With regard to hydrogen, I mean, obviously, you know, we see a niche for that, and would like to see, you know, what will happen there. With the vehicles being so expensive, though, at the moment, and indeed the cost of hydrogen being quite expensive, and looking at how that's going to come down, are we looking at a situation where, whereas, I mean, I think with battery electric vehicles for smaller vehicles and lighter duty cycles, we're rapidly approaching cost parity. So, you know, the economic case is kind of there without people having to reach into their pocket and pay more. So I think when we get to the phase-out date, it looks like we're already going to be there, and that's going to be relatively painless. I wouldn't say completely painless, obviously. For the vehicles like Wales and Wests, where it's much harder and hydrogen does look like it's going to be needed, on the current trajectory, it sort of looks like we're going to get to a point where you won't be able to buy the internal combustion engine vehicle anymore, and you're suddenly just going to have to bite the bullet and spend loads more money on your vehicles, loads more money on your fuel, and pass that cost on to the consumer or something. I don't know. Do you feel like we're looking at that kind of hard stop or painful transition? Or do you see reason for optimism that maybe things will pick up a bit quicker and we might have a slightly softer glide path into that?
Good question. Stephen?
Certainly room for optimism, but we need that regulatory or legislative framework that allows different solutions. Otherwise, we are going to have that hard stop that you see. And in the last couple of weeks, we've submitted a consultation response to the government, to the DfT, on the ZEV mandate. And we've stressed this point, that there will be parts of the van sector that will be left without a viable decarbonisation solution if there are no alternatives to plug-in. If we are forced down a plug-in route in our van fleet, then the costs are going to go up for the customer, because we will see a battery electric vehicle needing to rapid charge probably twice a day, whereas at the moment, and that'll take perhaps an hour of an engineer's time, whereas at the moment the vehicle is refueled probably twice a week and it takes 20 minutes. So there's going to be a clear cost up from the productivity perspective. And I'd add that whilst retail prices of vans may look about right or fairly close in terms of a battery electric vehicle and a diesel vehicle, when it comes to the transaction price for a fleet where we are attracting quite significant discounts, the diesel is still a lot cheaper to buy than a plug-in van, even with a government grant. So hence my comment at the end of my presentation that there needs to be a business case for decarbonisation to accelerate, certainly in the van sector.
Yeah, I can have a stab at an answer. You mentioned the battery electric and the fast charging. Again, having worked on the chemistry of batteries, the faster you charge a lithium-ion battery, the quicker you kill the battery. There's no way around getting the chemistry. We need a change in battery technology away from lithium-ion. And we fully support it. It's not about arguing for hydrogen. That's not the right solution for some vehicles, but we need a step change in battery technology for sure. In terms of the cost of hydrogen vehicles and hitting the cliff because we don't make the investment now, I showed you the rough calculations. Start investing now, the costs will start to come down. And it's a small number of vehicles you should be investing in now to make sure you don't have those huge expenses. I mean, that rough calculation was 80 million you save on 100 vehicles in the conversion. So we have to start that investment now. And Stephen sort of mentioned, and I mentioned, the hydrogen combustion engine vehicles. They're not that different in pricing to the diesel combustion vehicles right now. They've been made more efficient, ironically, through the investment in diesel, which has really helped. But yes, if we start allowing those explicitly into the economy, then that could be a solution to get there with a lot less pain. So there are ways to do it, but we need to be a lot more proactive and need to be a lot more on our game to do that.
Thank you. Any further questions? So I've got one for Stephen and Megan. So in terms of the operation, so now we're changing to battery, electric or hydrogen fueled vehicles. There's a big cost impact to all businesses. So are you looking at different business models in terms of working with others in your region to say, actually, rather than each of you have a recharge or refueling, are you looking at other ways of collaborating with other partners and businesses in your region?
I think we're always looking for ways to commercialise, for commercial opportunities. And as you say, we've got depots that are going to be sitting there during the day that potentially could be used for others, be utilised by others. I think that's something that we have to look at, seeing whether, you know, I'm going to say exploit, maybe that's the wrong word, but, you know, look at that opportunity, because, you know, there will be people that don't have the capacity that we can really do. And that's about the whole system, isn't it? Getting there to the ambitions that we've got. So, you know, absolutely. And the point that was raised about coaches, something I will certainly be taking back and having a conversation with people about.
I would say that collaboration is everything. Last year, we wouldn't have been able to run a hydrogen vehicle trial without collaborating with suppliers. It was very successful. It whetted our appetite. We need to do more. We need to gather more data. But equally, there are opportunities to collaborate with other operators with similar fleets or maybe dissimilar fleets, but where the duty cycles mean that the energy requirement is high. And I think, you know, Andrew touched on duty cycles and the amount of energy burned by a vehicle each day. That's what's key. And so it's about joining those operators together, where an operator may have HGVs, an operator like ourselves has a lot of vans, but if we're all using the same fuel type, then there's an opportunity to do differently.
You know, for us, the collaboration is essential. I mean, you want to get a hydrogen hub going, it's not going to be one vehicle that does that. The economics of that one vehicle refueling would be horrendous. I mean, someone did that in Newcastle. They converted one vehicle and said, well, can you come and refuel it? You joking? And his eyes were watering. It's never had hydrogen in it yet. So the more vehicles you can get there, the more the costs come down. And that's why we don't want to have things that are restricted. We want to have public access to the stations, because it helps in the economics. It helps bring attention. It helps get the development going, bringing the costs down and making sure that it's something that works in the medium to longer term. But I mean, there's several phases to that. It's the testing, then there's the demonstrations, and then only once we've got to that stage can you start building it out and treating people independently. But at the beginning, it's all about collaboration.
Any further questions? Questions down the front here.
Thanks very much. A really interesting panel. I'm Felicity Heathcote-Marks from Bear Analysis, and I was interested to ask, I know, Steve, you mentioned about research and how for Western Wales Utilities it was really important to understand like the problem statement up front and how your fleet was actually being used before making any decisions in terms of investment or which technology to go for, etc. So I'm wondering how you went about that and whether there is any best practice we can be kind of sharing around research and making sure we understand the problem for each specific use case in terms of decarbonisation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very good question. We are still very much in that process of learning about our fleet and starting to understand the things that we didn't realise we needed to know. And so we have written project specifications, and we are tendering for innovation-funded contracts to help us generate the information from our own fleet that we need to be able to share with vehicle manufacturers, with equipment manufacturers, with government, with other organisations. Very much in that phase at the moment. We've recently let a contract for to understand the amount of energy that we typically need when we're using our van as an on-site energy source. 3 years ago, when we implemented a new tracking system, then transport manager, which was me, thought, yes, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could work out how much fuel was used by the vehicle when it was driving the onboard power? So we put a switch in the telematics system so we knew when the power takeoff or the onboard power was operating. Great idea in theory, but when it comes down to it, we find that the vehicle's CAN network records fuel usage on a trip basis, so we can't actually correlate the information. So right now we have a project coming forwards to look at all the tools and equipment. What are the energy usages? How are the tools used in practice every day? These are things that, because diesel and petrol is so highly developed, we've taken these things for granted, and now we can't take them for granted because we're going to have to do differently in future. So we're right in that learning phase at the moment. We're commissioning projects to gather the information that we need. Total cost of operation is another thing. I touched on productivity in one of my earlier answers. And what we need to understand when we're comparing the diesel benchmark with battery electric or hydrogen, what are the different issues? What are the different costs? It's not just the cost of the vehicle. It's not just the cost of the fuel. What about the engineer that we spent £250,000 training, whose downtime then increases? What about the length of time to rapid charge the vehicle? Well, that could actually be less time than it takes to drive to a distant hydrogen refueling station. So our future total cost of operation model, which is something else that we've tendered for, needs to be dynamic. We need to be able to build in the data as soon as we get it and then take a fresh look at the answers that are coming out with the new data. What do we now know that we didn't know a week ago or a month ago? So I hope that answers the question.
Brilliant, thank you. Any further questions? So, just time for one more question. So, obviously, big act now. There's a climate emergency coming on. We need to look at how we decarbonise transport. So, for each of you, if there's one request or one ask from the UK government to help decarbonise your fleets, what would that be? So, I'm going to start this then, Andrew.
Thanks. Ladies first, I thought. One request, I mean, it was up there before. I mean, the harmonisation with the EU would help a lot, but particularly on and explicitly allowing the conversion to hydrogen combustion engines, that could really accelerate the path. You said one, so just
hydrogen combustion engines.
Because it's internal combustion engines, because ICE is cool. There we go.
Stephen?
I'd echo Andrew's sentiment, really. Technological neutrality is essential, and it doesn't look like we have that at the moment.
Money. Yeah, I think we just need, funding helps us deliver the ambitions that we've got. We're a public sector organisation, so clearly if there was more money available to us, we could move further and faster.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So that brings us to the end of this session, the third and final session for the energy, but it's also the last session at Interchange. So first of all, thank you all for staying to the end. I hope you found today's session valuable and the previous sessions across the last 2 days valuable. And you've built new networks, made some new friends, and hopefully continue the conversation. I look forward to seeing you in 2026. So just leaves me to say, have a safe journey home. Thank you for the panel, so do a round of applause for the panel.